Hello and welcome to another episode of Chasing Excellence. My name is Patrick Cummings, and as always, I am joined this week by Ben Bergeron. We are also joined by friend of the show, Jon Gilson. Every week here on the show, we dedicate some time to exploring how we can live a life of better health and increased fulfillment. We answer your questions about the 5 factors of health, dive deep on living a life of excellence, and explore the strategies and frameworks to help us chase what truly matters. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you both for joining me today. How you guys doing?
Doing good, Pat.
Doing really good. Yeah. Excited about this.
I'm excited about this. The two of you, I was thinking about this prior to recording. I have not worked with anybody more than the two of you. Jon, you and I started Again Faster Faster Equipment back in 2005, 2006, depending on when you want to kind of count it. We did that out of our crappy little apartment in Brookline, Massachusetts, and we grew it to something that I thought was really quite special. And Ben, obviously, you and I have been working together quite a bit since Again Faster, and so this is really fun for me to have both of you on an episode.
Beyond that, just kind of like that split duality from you. There's Jon was a coach at CrossFit Boston, was where I did my first CrossFit workout, real CrossFit workout. I'd done them on my own with Heather and stuff like that, but that was the first affiliate I ever went to. And I can remember, we started back then, it was like not like it is now. If you did CrossFit and you were within 60 miles, you knew the other people. You know, we all connected on the forum. Yep. And we used to have a New Year's Day tradition. Do you remember what that was?
No.
For real? Oh, we used to go and do Linda on New Year's Day.
Oh, I didn't realize that was New Year's.
Yes,
I do remember that. I don't remember that was New Year's.
Early Again Faster blog post about doing Linda at CrossFit Boston with Ben and
I was
Heather.
There. Yes, exactly right. Yeah, or maybe we turned it into a New Year's Day thing, but I definitely did it with you guys as the first one. It was like, wow, this is pretty crazy and gnarly. And then Jon was on seminar staff when I started going there, so Jon was a mentor and kind of like helped guide me through the process. And those were the good old days of CrossFit.
Yeah, and you know, I've got two for you, Ben. My first real Ben Bergeron memory was going to the school that you and Heather worked at.
Oh yeah,
and
Nobles,
Nobles, and getting medicine balls to go to the Maine Criminal Justice Academy.
I could have told you what seminar it was for. Yep.
Yeah,
and this is back in 2007, probably.
Something like that.
This way it used to be. If HQ wanted to run a seminar, the level 1 coaches had to go around to local affiliates to round up enough equipment to actually put on the seminar. That's the way it was then.
Yeah,
it was so grassroots. It was so cool.
Yeah, it really was. And then
I was just saying as well, when you moved out of your house in New Hampshire, I drove up to New Hampshire to buy all of your garage gym equipment for CF&E.
That was an awesome gym. I loved that. And then of course there was the Rogue Again Faster Tahoe Throwdown.
Oh, for sure.
Still one of my favorite things.
Yes. I think that's like, for people that were around back then, that's a real kind of like drop a pin type thing. People remember that. It was such cool content. It was such a cool thing to be a part of. There was something really interesting about like Rogue versus Again Faster, this like dynamic of these two teams and these two emerging businesses. It was, and that was a really cool thing to be a part of.
All right. Jon, we brought you on the show, because this is kind of a new fun thing for us. We had EC last month on the show, joining us, having friends join us for answering or to answer questions that our listeners have sent us. I wanted you to come on this month because you and I are starting something new, and I wanted to point some folks towards it, as well as have an excuse to get the three of us together to talk. Give us the 1 to 2 minute version of what Optimal Agency. Optimal Agency is this new project, this new podcast that you and I are starting. Give us the kind of elevator pitch for it, and then we'll leap into questions we've got this week.
Optimal agency is a way for people to systemically build their personal autonomy. And one of the things that CrossFit gave, I know all three of us, is this tremendous sense of personal freedom and agency in the world, that we could build and create the things we wanted to create, and that nobody was going to tell us how to do that. And in examining and thinking about that, I realized really that there are three elements of having freedom in the world, having the freedom to make the impact you want to have. You have to have enough money, not all the money in the world, but enough money. And so you need to build your wealth. You need to be healthy. You need to be free of infirmity, so you don't have to worry about that. But even more, you need to have work capacity. You need to be able to move yourself around the world. And then the last thing that I think you need for impact is time. You have to have enough sovereignty over your day, over your 9 to 5, over waking up, going to sleep, and everything in between, to actually be moving forward, to get the collaborations you need, to spend the time to write the things you need to write, to put leverage into the world. And so optimal agency is really two things. It's the rules. What do you have to do if you just want to do paint by numbers to build your health, wealth, and time? And then as you're building those, what do you have to do to maintain balance between them so you don't skew too far in one direction? That idea that I could spend all my time building my wealth and I'd have no time for my family, for workouts. Maybe my health would deteriorate, my stress would go up. Or I could spend, all my time working out and forget to make money for 20 years and find myself in a place where I'm plenty healthy, but I still can't impact the world. And so the thought is, build your health, wealth, and time to build your individual freedom so that you can have a maximal impact in the world that you choose to play in.
Folks can check it out, optimalagency.co, if you are curious and interested in learning more. All right, let's dive in. We've got this episode. We've got listener questions about Zone 2 training, how to deal with the financial risk of leaving a job you hate, and whether or not we think someone can overcome the adage that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Our workout this week is going to be another listener question. This one about how to prioritize everything, or how to prioritize when everything seems important. And lastly, we'll give a report on how we did on our most recent monthly challenge. I'm going to kick things off with our warm-up. We start each episode with listener questions about the 5 factors of health, those few fundamental behaviors that most positively affect our performance, vitality, and longevity. Those 5 factors are how we eat, how we move, how we think, connect, and how we recover. And as we did with EC, we're going to do 3 questions because these conversations tend to be a little bit longer. So instead of our usual 5 questions in the 5 factors, we're going to do 3. We've got questions in the move category, the think category, and the connect category. Let's do move first, and this is from George. I have a question about Zone 2 training. What are your thoughts about it, and how would you apply it to a typical CrossFitter's program? For example, how many times a week and for how long would you prescribe someone specifically train in Zone 2? Ben, let's go with you first.
For starters, I think that for a lot of our listeners, we should just describe what Zone 2 is. And Zone 2 is essentially if lower intensity, longer duration, cardiovascular exercise. So light jogging, light biking, vigorous hiking, that type of stuff. If you're, it's usually correlated to heart rate, but doesn't necessarily need to be. And it could also be correlated to blood lactate levels, a lot of different stuff. But the real easy way that I've used this is like your breath to speaking ratio. Mm-hmm. So if you were to be talking and biking at the same time, let's imagine we're on a C2 stationary bike, and I was there pedaling and I was having a conversation and be able to talk to you at this level of cadence, I'm probably in a Zone 2. If I need to stop every few words and take a breath, I'm probably in Zone 3. Zone 4 is obviously now we're kind of like taking maybe 2 or maybe 3 words at a time, and Zone 5 and so on. To the point where you're Zone 5 plus, maybe 6 if you want to go to the scale of 7. You really don't know your name and stuff of like that. So Zone 2 is that lowest level where you can converse at a very conversational place. It's a lower intensity, 60-ish, 65%-ish of your max heart rate. People like it a lot for fat burning. If you've ever seen that scale that's on the side of the the exercise bikes at the Globo gyms. And it's also very prominent in endurance sports. If the question is, how do you incorporate zone 2 training into, I think he said it's George.
Yep.
It's into a typical CrossFit training protocol. My answer is you don't. It's the filler. It's the extra stuff you do to gain big capacities in certain domains. Written right into the 100 words of fitness is keep workouts short and intense. That prescription that Greg Glassman laid out 2 decades ago holds up as well as any doctrine for fitness that there is. So if the goal is overall fitness and the goal is to train 5 or 6 times a week, and you're going to have an hour in the gym, I would not use up any one of those minutes on zone 2 stuff. Another example to kind of lay out my intention, my rationale for not doing this is I had a lot of my games athletes do a lot of zone 2. And I was lucky enough to talk to one of the cycling coaches for the Tour de France. And my question to him was pretty much exactly this question, but for elite athletes. Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, how many times a week are they cycling? And I was like, probably, a real, true, pure, not jump on a bike and also do thrusters, not jump on a bike and also do burpees and bar muscle ups, but like actual biking. And I was like, maybe twice a week? He goes, it's easy. The answer is 0. He's like, why would you ever trade volume for quantity? I'm sorry, quantity for quality. If you're only gonna be on a bike twice, you need these to be super high quality sessions. And the quality is intervals. He's like, you're not gonna do any of this stuff with those guys. Now, the caveat or the asterisk to this would be depends, right? And it's always that gonna be that. It depends on the athlete, depends on the goals, depends on the training history and all those things. But if George's question is for a regular CrossFit training protocol, my answer would be it doesn't exist inside of it.
Interesting. John, what do you think?
I think it depends. And is George calling himself a typical CrossFitter, or is he asking for a peanut butter spread across the entire CrossFit universe? If he's asking about himself, my question would be, George, where are you now on your ability to execute long, slow distance with some level of proficiency? And is that satisfactory to you? Can you go out today and run a half marathon? I'm betting, Ben, everybody in your stable could, if appropriately motivated, go out and run a half marathon. The question is, what decile or quartile of performance would you be in, and what decile or quartile of performance do you want to be in? What I've seen, and maybe this differs from Ben because he's in it, and I certainly am not anymore, is that where we would typically see the CrossFit regime fail was at extremely long distance. If you watched that first trail run 5K in Aromas, you saw some people who were having a very hard time maintaining performance below a lactate threshold. And so, if that's a place, George, where you're lacking, it's certainly worth spending some of your time remedying that deficit. The only time, if you're not lacking, let's say you're a 50th percentile performer at long, slow distance, you can go run a 5K at 50% of, the bell curve for your age and sex. Ben's right, don't bother. If you find, however, that you're dramatically underperforming there, that you kick ass at a 10 or 15 or 20 minute AMRAP, but if I kick that AMRAP out to 45 minutes, you fall apart, you do need some zone 2 training, likely to just push that lactate threshold further into the future. Should it be the preponderance of your training? No, but I guess that would be my takedown on it depends.
There's been, and I don't follow him too much, but it strikes me that Peter Attia is somebody who is growing in popularity in this space. Is kind of right up there with a Huberman. Am I right to say that he's been a very large and influential proponent of zone 2? And if so, and even without him, but what is the argument for zone 2? Is it simply for folks who aren't already doing CrossFit or something similar to it, and suddenly, okay, this is really important? In other words, does CrossFit kind of fill a gap that most people aren't filling otherwise, and so zone 2 makes sense? Or what is the argument for zone 2 if it sounds like from the both of you that it's valuable but perhaps not essential?
Yeah, I think that if we are talking, if we are to expand the scope of George's question, which is, what about in addition to? What I wouldn't propose is people take a day away from their 5 or 6 days a week of mixed modality, high intensity, and substitute it in for a 60 to 90 minute long slow. If we're saying on Sundays, would it be beneficial for me to sit on a bike for 75 minutes in zone 2 in addition to? That's an interesting conversation. That's fun to have. That's what I do. This is like, now we're talking about what I'm doing, but that's above and beyond the normal fitness. Like, we can't, if it's inside, the inside is 5 or 6 days a week. To me, you're not going to get the same benefits out of, because also remember, like this, you're missing out on one of those other things. It's only 5 days a week. One of those is going to be long. I just don't know if we're going to get the same benefit out of that zone 2 as we would out of the high intensity interval training that we would otherwise. I think that there's just, again, you think of the bell-shaped curve, that lactic has, that anaerobic and that longer tail. If we're just going to hang out more at that lower tail, then okay, let's also make sure we're spending a little bit extra time at the strength aspect of this. It's like, that's why this middle thing is so beneficial.
Got it. Anything to add, John?
I happen to be reading Peter Attia's book right now, and his argument for zone 2 is twofold. It's one, that you increase your lactate clearance through increased mitochondrial health. That's one. The second is what he calls metabolic flexibility. That is, the primary substrate that you're burning during zone 2 is fat. Of course, when you get into anaerobic activity, you're burning primarily carbohydrate. His argument is that you should have the metabolic flexibility as an athlete and individual to burn both. I think those are both completely valid, and of course, we need to keep in mind that his target there is what he calls the centenarian decathlon. Can you do this stuff when you're 100 years old? And so can I build your capacity to simply move yourself through the world as a primary? That is not necessarily the primary goal of CrossFit. The primary goal of CrossFit is to increase your work capacity across broad time and modal domains. And if we extend it, broad time, age, and modal domains. But what CrossFit includes in that definition is, of course, the ability to do that 1 rep max deadlift, that back squat, etc. Attia also is a large proponent of strength training, and in fact, in his book, dictates that you pursue that as well. But I think we want to just make the distinction that we're talking about longevity versus performance now and performance later. Those are not the same definition. And if you pursued zone 2 to Attia's definition, let's say 3 hours a week, it's going to crowd out your other training. It's going to. And it's probably going to be somewhat detrimental to muscle mass, which is a primary indicator of your ability to perform CrossFit well.
Got it. What's the name of Peter Attia's book?
Outlive.
All right. Our next question is in our think category, and it is from Paul. Paul asks, I found myself doing what was best or most safe to do, quote unquote, and that has led me to a job I truly hate. While I agree with the mindset that if you don't like your job, you can change it and find another one, what I don't hear or hear talked about is the topic of financial risk being brought into the equation. How do you tell someone who makes 6 figures to leave that security to follow what makes them feel fulfilled when they have expenses like student loans that creep over their heads or families to support? I'm curious, as I feel this way every day and I feel stuck in a place that I don't want to be. I really like this question from Paul, and I wanted to bring it into this episode because it's right in line with what Optimal Agency is all about, John. And it also reflects something that we've talked about before. I think we did a workout on it in a previous episode on just the value of doing what sets your heart on fire and not settling and not kind of putting off doing the things that get us up in the morning for whatever reason. So I'll throw it to you, Jon, first.
Yeah. Whenever you're considering changing careers, I think the first question you ask yourself is, are you running to something or are you running from something? And given Paul's description here, it sounds like he's running from something, a job he doesn't like. And when you're doing that, I think the first thing you want to do is just reset the target. What would a job look like that Paul wants to be at? And I would distinguish that from the field he's in or the career he's in and just break it down into its subcomponents. When people find jobs they love, typically they're fulfilling kind of they're ticking a bunch of different boxes. They have some level of autonomy and control over their day-to-day. They have recognition from their peers and from their bosses. They have some level of purpose, like a greater societal purpose for doing that job. And those are really kind of set in stone. So I would ask Paul, which of those elements aren't you receiving in your job today? And what would a job look like that gave you those things? And rather than necessarily swiveling out of his career entirely, he could ask himself, is there a job at a different place where I can go through an interview process and I can conduct that interview process in such a way that I'm controlling for those things, that I'm making sure that there's more purpose here, that they have a culture of recognition and of, valuing their peers, and just taking a look at that job and saying, is it my title or is it my environment? And it's funny, I was reading this article in Scientific American yesterday, actually, as I was thinking about this. And it's from, a peer-reviewed study that people done, and this is a meta-analysis, something like 29,000 subjects, that people's mental health is directly related to their manager's style. And so if their manager has a transformative style, where they're encouraging, where they're providing recognition, where they're helping you grow your career, those people have much higher, statistically significantly higher mental health levels than people who experience the opposite end of the spectrum, which is a destructive manager, somebody who's cutting down their work, who is using carrots and sticks as their primary motivators. And so, I think as Paul looks at this, he could look at autonomy, purpose, time freedom, but maybe Paul just needs a new boss.
Love that. Thoughts, Ben?
Well, first, before we go to Paul's thing, I love that framework that Jon just broke down in terms of what people are looking for in their job, and autonomy, purpose, and recognition, I think was the third one, right?
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal. I love that. I'm going to take that back to as a manager myself and trying to build teams. That's a really cool thing. I think probably if I was to add a fourth to that, I think some level of mastery would kind of go into that category of like, I'm good at this. That's gives a lot of fulfillment in the job itself. If you constantly are struggling, you're never meeting the goals, you're never meeting the expectations of your peers, your customer, or your boss, your organization, you're probably not going to feel like you're thriving in that role as well. And back to Paul's specific thing, I'm glad that questions like this come up, because we talk all the time about like, go and do what sets your heart on fire. It's such a good tagline. And what I'm not saying by that is like every single day has to be magical, and every moment of your job is, total elation and joy and pleasure. And we got to be realists in this thing as well. And we talk a lot about that and understanding that, it's work. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a challenge. And because the hardness and the challenge is there, doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong or you're not doing what you should be doing. Now, that's not to say just stay in that job regardless. So this is where it becomes the hard thing for everybody, is it's up to the individual to decide, where am I? And there's kind of like this, I think of it as like, these kind of moving different pieces that Paul has in place here of like, you have financial security and financial risk, but you also have fulfillment, and then you have like going through the motions. And it's kind of like as one bubble gets bigger, the others are going to have to get smaller. And it's up for everyone to decide on what their appropriate level is for those different growing amoeba-like things on the dinner plate. Yes, you're going to have a lot more financial security if you are making six figures, but you might not like your job. But the way that you, it's like, it comes down to like, what do you value? I want to be able to have that financial security. So I have the freedom. If my kids do get sick, I can get them to incredible healthcare and be by their bedside for 6 months and not have to worry about work. That's gonna be a very different thing than if you go and live in the woods. Like you go live in the woods, you're with your kids all the time, but somebody gets sick, like you're going to be in a really hard place. So this is what we all need to, this is the self-reflection we need to do in terms of what we're trying to chase on this platform. We need to know at what levels are right for us. And it's different for everybody. In terms of the actual mechanistic ways to do that, I think, some of the stuff like Jon said is like, figure out like, what is the level for you? Like, do you need the BMW in the private school, or is it, no, I could really be in a really good place, living in a rural area on a piece of farmland in, backwoods XYZ. And, so the way you can do this is, I think that in terms of like, I think you mentioned like family something and student loans.
Student loans. Yep. Student loans, family.
Well, if you sold your house and moved to Mississippi, could you take out $10, $20, $30, $50,000 out of the house and pay down the student loans? And now all of a sudden you have this new lifestyle, but it allows you to now again, kind of rewrite the new norm. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that we all have this legacy built into us. It creates this momentum and this path, and you entrench this thing like the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. You're like, well, this is the path the river flows, and it's so much work to create a new path that it's probably not even worth it. That is the thing that I would encourage people not to get entrenched into, is it's like zero cost-based accounting. Like, start from not what did we spend last year, not that, starting today. If we were going to start our path for our family today, in line with the visions and the values that we have today, what is the thing that we would do? Not what is the thing that my parents did, not as the way I was brought up, not the way my spouse's parents did it, not the expectations that we had when we were 25 when we got married, but today as 45-year-olds, what do we want for our life going forward? If that means moving to backwoods Montana, awesome, that's phenomenal. If it means staying put and understanding that this job is in line with what we want going forward, that's awesome as well. The biggest thing to me is, don't continually berate and beat yourself up for not living the life of your dreams when you are either not making the move or this is in line with the life of your dreams. It's like, just understand that it's a movable, shakeable thing if you want to move it or shake it. Otherwise, there's no such thing as perfection. There's going to be struggle. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be hard days.
Yeah, I think Ben's got the exact right element of it. And this is the underpinning of the dilemma we all face, which is, Paul, you're trading money for stress. You're making enough. You're making the amount you probably want to make, but it's stressing you out. Is that trade-off worthwhile? And if it's not, what can you do about it? One is figure out exactly what's stressing you out and find another job that pays you just as much, that doesn't stress you out. The other thing that you can do, of course, is to simply say, hey, it absolutely has to be a different career. This one isn't acceptable to me anymore. And inherent in this question is that switching jobs is somehow going to reduce Paul's financial security, which is saying he's considering a job move where he knows he's going to be paid less. Well, it's one thing to make six figures. It's another thing to have six figures in the bank to cushion a move like this. There's how much money you make, but how much do you save as well? Do you gut out this job for 3 months or 6 months, knowing it's a bird in the hand, put away 30, 40, 50, $60,000, and then make your move, knowing that you have a cushion that's not going to sacrifice your family's stability? And at the same time, can you reduce your bills? Inherent in what you're saying, Ben, is it's cheaper to live in Mississippi and Montana than it is Boston or San Francisco. And that's true. And so there's this whole range of hooks that you could potentially grab a hold of. You've framed the problem too narrowly. You've said this is a financial problem. It's not. It's a problem with a whole bunch of sliders, and odds are you can take action on one or more of them.
All right. Love that. I'm going to jump into our Connect question. This is from Ryan. It's a long question. I'm going to try to paraphrase a little bit. I'm going to start though. Do you have any advice for chasing excellence in an environment of mediocrity? Do you think someone can defy the quote average of the 5 people you spend the most time with rule? And then he goes on and gives a little bit of context. He moved away from home when he was young. He moved back. And he moved back because his life wasn't going in the direction he wanted. He's been able to kind of right the ship, so to speak, but he finds himself surrounded by folks who are not in line with the new direction of his life. And that new direction is health and wealth and a certain set of priorities that other folks around him don't seem to share. I'm going to read a little bit more. I try not to let it manifest resentment, but I think it does. I do my best not to come off thinking I'm better than them because I do all these things. Unless they ask about a certain aspect, I don't bring it up. In the past, I found somewhat like-minded folks at jiu-jitsu gyms, but in the last 6 months, I've moved cities, had knee surgery, and just had my first child. So I haven't had that community and just started from scratch with a new BJJ gym. Even with that, I felt much sense of having a mentor or accountability, I never felt much sense of having a mentor or accountability partner. So again, back to his original question is, any advice for chasing excellence in an environment of mediocrity? Jon, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I feel like any question that has chasing excellence in the title should absolutely go to Ben first, but I'll take a whack at it anyway. Okay, so Ryan, I'm reading between the lines. You're in this miasmia chaos state of probably hanging out with your old friends at the same time that you haven't yet made a group of new friends, but you've traded lifestyles that your old friends don't participate in. Right. And so how do you get a life, so to speak, where your friends and your environment aligns with your goals? So you have really just a couple options. Try and drag your old friends into your new life, or leave them where they stand and get new friends in your new life. Those are really your only 2 options. So if we boil it down to that, you probably want to make a good faith effort to drag your old friends into your new life. I'm guessing. I'm kind of getting that sense, as I read deep into the context of what's Ryan's written here. So Ryan, be the inviter instead of the invitee. Instead of waiting for your friends to say, hey man, we're going to the bar to watch the game, you coming, and doing a bunch of stuff that isn't in line with your new value set, invite your friend to jiu-jitsu. And, I think the other interesting thing is, to look at that and say, okay, let's imagine we're talking about 5 old friends here. Are one or more of them more likely to say yes to that than all of them? Well, don't try and bring all of them. Bring 1 or 2 of them, into your new life and be the inviter, not the invitee. I think the other thing, Ryan, that's going to help you here quite a lot is time. You're in a new city. You got a new baby. You've got a new set of values. Wow. That can be psychologically just a massive amount of weight. And it's really easy in the midst of change to want to blow up old things, to not feel secure yourself, and to feel like you need to do something to control the situation. It might be that you just have to let what's happening happen. Keep going to the new BJJ gym. Take care of your family. Your new friends will come. You're going to have to make an effort to get those new friends, right? And see, hey, can I spend a little less time with my old life and focus on what's right in front of me? It's going to happen, man. 6 months from now, 12 months from now, you're probably going to look back and say, all I needed was time.
I love the advice of picking one of the friends, because what really would happen is if two people were suddenly doing this new thing, then it's easier for the third person to do it. When three people are doing it, then the last two are like, well, fine, if I still want to hang out with you, I guess we've got to go, beat each other up and lift barbells or whatever. So I love that. Just like picking off the weakest member of the group and bring them along. I love that.
It took me at least a year to get you into a CrossFit gym.
Yeah, no kidding.
I actually think where Jon ended up is exactly what my suggestion is. It's to change environments takes time.
Yeah.
I would measure this in terms of when that saying of you are the average of your 5 closest friends, decade by decade, not right now today, but when you were in your teenage years. I'm going to guess that was pretty accurate. When you were in your 20s, across the decade, I'm going to guess that's pretty accurate. But we all have these inflection points where there's a transition. And I can speak from experiences. I remember when I came across this and I was like, I don't feel like that's my case. I don't feel like I am the average and then 4 years later, I was like, holy smokes, yes. Here it makes sense, and now it does. So I wouldn't be in a rush to try to, I would not try to pull, this is my take, I would not put a whole bunch of effort into trying to pull your buddies into BJJ, knowing that you're the way that they are right now, which is they're the complainers, they're the partiers, they're the drinkers, and you're the outlier. You trying to change an environment is very, very challenging. You just being you and letting the environment, let the environment come to you. But as Jon said, like you got to put in some work. You got to put yourself out there. When you join the new BJJ gym or CrossFit gym or whatever it is, go to the social events, hang out after class, talk to people in the locker room, meet with the coach, like be involved in it. And I can, as close as I can, assuredly promise that the new environment will morph and conform to your new interest as opposed to the old way. Changing environments is incredibly challenging. It's just like, it's a real big thing in a new city with a newborn child. There's enough going on. Just getting yourself to the gym is going to be hard enough. You trying to get yourself and being the accountability buddy for somebody else and trying to change them along the way, I think is an additional weight that probably is not going to serve you in the long run. I'm not saying ditch your friends, but being willing to change friend groups along the way.
We'll be back to the show in just a minute. This week's episode is brought to you by our friends at Element. Check out drinkelement.com/excellence to get yourself the best dang electrolyte mix on the planet. With warmer weather threatening us here in the Northeast, it's going to be ever more important that we replenish the electrolytes we will undoubtedly lose during a hard, long workout. That is where Element comes in. It's got a science-backed electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, and 60 milligrams magnesium. In other words, all the stuff we need and none of the junky filler that other mixes and drinks offer. Don't risk the cramps and muscle fatigue that comes with a low electrolyte balance. Get Element instead. Right now, they're offering a free sample pack with any purchase to you. That's 8 single-serving packs free with any Element order. This is a great way to try all 8 of their flavors or share Element with a friend. Get yours at drinkelement.com. That's drinkelement.com/excellence. This deal is only available through that link, drinkelement.com/excellence. Go get it. This week's episode is also brought to us by a new sponsor and one we are excited to introduce you to. Head to calderalab.com/excellence and say goodbye to whatever generic face wash you've had in your medicine cabinet for the last 14 years. Caldera Lab creates high-performance men's skincare products by combining pharmaceutical-grade science and nature's purest and most potent ingredients. Backed by a leading clinical trial where 9 out of 10 men experienced healthier and visibly improved skin, Caldera Lab will make you the envy of your office mates. I've been using their stuff for a week or so. Not only does my skin look and feel way better, but my kids like me more, the weather is warmer, and the news is just a little less depressing than usual. I highly recommend you try their Regime Bundle. It'll get you 3 of their products for a twice-a-day routine that will transform your skin. You'll get 20% off your purchase with the code EXCELLENCE at calderalab.com/excellence. That's spelled CALDERALAB.com. Go ahead, unlock your youthful glow and get ready for summer with Caldera Lab. All right, we're going to jump into our workout this week. And I think actually some of the questions, some of the conversations we've already had will feed into this. So hopefully it'll be a nice little bridge into continue those conversations. This is a question from Courtney. How do you decide what your priorities are when everything feels like a priority? Who wants to go first?
I think we turn this into a conversation.
Sure.
Because I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
But
it reminds me of...
It's a great question, right? Like, yes,
Yeah.
like everything is so here's where I would start is understand life is about choices. And you can't have it all, right? You're just not going to have it all. You're not going to be a CrossFit Games athlete, CEO of a Fortune 500 company, be able to make it to every kid's soccer practice and family dinner, and be able to also be on the PTO, go on silent meditation treats, do yoga you can't do all of it. So the first thing you got to bring to the table is recognize that when you're saying yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. And I think that's inherent in the question. It's understood, but just that putting that on the table, that there is a if everything seems important, then okay, yes, everything's important. Know that you're not going to have I'll use myself as an example. I believe that, the 5 factors are super important. I think that the way training every day, I want to move. I think sleeping 8+ hours a night is super important. I believe that the way we eat and eating clean and, cooking our own meals. I believe in creating really, really strong relationships. I believe in eat, sleep, train, move, think, connect, whatever I missed there. I don't even know. But all of those things, now of those things, none of them are I'm willing to go 80% into all 5.
Yep.
I'm willing to go 70% in all 5. And I actually don't purposely prioritize one above the other. My goal is to make sure that we've talked about this analogy a lot. It's not the seesaw staying balanced. It's the Frisbee on the pencil, right? You need to make sure that floating dinner plate isn't spilling over because there's so many different factors. It'd be so nice if it was just this yin or yang, work-life balance, right? Do I want to be healthy or do I want to make a lot of money? But that's just not the reality of life. It's this, the saying is we make 33, whatever it is. I don't know if it's 30,000 or 3,000, but thousands and thousands of choices a day. Well, pick the big ones, And then as we do on this, what we recommend is create really strong principles for those things. And principles are principles. They don't need to be laws. They don't need to be stringent, you can't break them. But I want to make sure I'm home for dinner every night. I'm going to go to my kids' soccer games. That's the way I'm taking care of my family. And when I go home, I don't have a computer and I put my phone in the drawer. You just kind of create these types of guidelines for yourself so that it makes it easier in the heat of the moment to not have to prioritize, should I respond to that text message or, work with my kid on their learning the states and the capitals. This is real time. We're on 37 states right now. So we missed Montgomery for Alabama. He got all the others of the 37.
Love that.
But that's the biggest thing is create. So if everything is a choice every single time at every single moment in real time, we're we're going to be exhausted and we're probably not going to make the best decisions based off of what we actually are true priorities. So you set up the frameworks in peacetime so that in wartime, the decisions are already made ahead of you. You know the rules of engagement. I said we may turn into a conversation. I just went on a rant about that. But
it was a really good rant. I mean, I love the fact that you're talking about principles and saying, hey, Courtney, what are yours? Figure them out. And I think really the great part about that is if everything in the world feels like a priority, odds are that you're getting priorities from too many different sources. In other words, you have your priorities, but then you probably also have other people's priorities that are being enforced upon you. And I think it's really important that in dictating out your principles, you're not going to have other people's priorities in there. You should have your priorities in there. And so the easiest way to start to cut this mammoth task down is to say, is this my priority or somebody else's? And to get to your priorities. Now, your priorities can involve other people. I'm not saying be, unremittingly selfish, but if you can say, hey, these are my principles, right? I believe in working out every day. I believe in connecting with my family and my friends every day. I believe in eating healthy, and I believe in working as hard as I can for my employer between the hours of 9 and 5, right? You can then say to anything that comes up, does this fit with those principles or not? And so when somebody comes in over the top and says, well, Courtney, it's my priority that you join the PTA and give us 4 hours a month on Thursday evenings, you can just say, that doesn't hit the filter of my priorities. So I'm going to go ahead and say no. And Ben, you started there, that idea of, you have to be able to say no to something.
Yeah, that's
to
a big
anything.
one. Yeah, it's you create these priorities. So it's what I was trying to allude to, and you said it better, is so when it comes up, the things to say no to, and those ahead of time. Like, hey, can you do a meeting? Can you jump on a call at 5:45? My answer, I already know ahead of time, is going to be no. I don't have to look at my calendar because I can be home at 6. So it's like, these are the things. And as you were saying that, John, which I really liked, it made me think, not only I'm going to work out every day, I'm going to eat, but understand that there's no such thing as perfection. Like, we got to these, our listeners are like go-getters. It's this kind of like the evolution of what chasing excellence is. In the beginning, it's about work ethic and discipline and grit and tenacity and doing the hard things, like, for sure. Then it becomes like, well, are we doing the right things? Like, and this is where we are, the priorities. But then it continues to spin and go, slow down a little bit. Are we just creating extra stress because we're caught up in this? I have to do more. I have to do more. I have to do more. And just like chill a little bit. It's kind of like the 3.0 of chasing excellence. And to me, it's giving yourself, this is going to sound weird for a chasing excellence audience, and it's only for this audience, because it's, again, if this is for the 3.0, this is like, you take chemistry 1.0, chemistry 2.0, chemistry 3.0. When we're in this one, it's like, be okay lowering standards a little bit. Like, you don't have to qualify for quarterfinals, like in CrossFit. You just going to the gym every day, you don't need to be at the top of the leaderboard. You don't need to be able to do a muscle up. You don't need to be able to clean and jerk 250 pounds. Like, just be there every day and enjoy being there. And this is where you get the ability to put in multiple priorities. Because if the priority is, I need to go semifinals in the games, guess what? Yeah, all the other priorities have to fall off the plate. This is like, There is no balance in exceptional. Like, if you want to be the extraordinary, the one, if you want to be the Michael Jordan, if you want to be the Kobe Bryant, if you want to be the Matt Fraser, if you want to be the Tia, there's not going to be a lot of balance in your life by design. Because what they're saying is singular priority.
Yeah.
If you want to bring in 3, 4, 5, a half dozen other priorities, cool, I'm with you. You have to lower the bar a little bit on each one.
the word priorities wasn't even pluralized.
Right. It's exactly.
It's not.
It's not a real word.
It's not a. It's not a plural word.
Right.
You get a.
It means the one.
Yeah, the one.
Yeah.
You get a priority, not priorities, and so you couldn't be more clear, Ben, that what we've got to do is lower our bar to success if we want to quote unquote succeed at multiple things, and hopefully we've helped Courtney do that a little bit today.
One thing it makes me think of, or the Courtney's question made me think of, and I know you guys have both read it. Ben, you'd actually mentioned it this morning, 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman, a book. And one of the things in there that he says that I think is so spot on. The first time I read it, I was a little annoyed by it. But then after I reflected on it, I realized how right he was. But he was talking about something we've talked about, Ben, on the show before, which is Covey's rocks analogy, right? Professor walks in with an empty jar. I'll skip most of it, but effectively it comes down to, like, if you try to put the little things in the jar first, you're not going to have any room for the rocks, which are the big things, the priorities, the important things. But if instead you start with the rocks, you can then fit in the smaller rocks, pebbles, sand, etc. The lesson being, of course, start by focusing on the big rocks. The little rocks will come. Focus on the little rocks. You won't have any room for the big rocks. And what Oliver Burkeman points out is, well, that's all well and good. The problem is that we all have too many big rocks. Nobody ever teaches us, not the order of events. That's okay, cool. That's an important lesson. But the lesson before that lesson is, this jar can only fit 2 rocks, 3 rocks tops. And all of us keep showing up to this jar with these 5, 6, 7, 10 big rocks. And we're like, I'm trying to get the rocks first and I'll get to the pebbles later, where the problem is that we're just carrying around too many rocks. We think too many things are important. And I'll throw a question to you, Jon, because one of the things about, as we've been developing Optimal Agency, is it's actually been super helpful for me to give me the 3 rocks. The 3 rocks are my health, my wealth, and my time freedom, my time autonomy. And everything else is a smaller rock compared to those 3 things. And by being able to simplify, if that's the right word, and filter everything through, well, is this serving one of these 3 big rocks, has been wildly helpful for me as we've worked on the project and just as I've kind of worked on my own self. And so I'm curious, do you see health, wealth, and time as the 3 big rocks for many of us, at least, to consider?
I have such a hard time coming up with the counter case. In other words, what's the huge thing that goes in there that I'm not accounting for? And if you start to think about health just a little bit wider and say it's physical health and mental health is comprised of both your literal brain tissue as well as your connection and your emotional health, I really can't find the other thing. And so it's kind of this string theory of priority, if you will. And so it does feel that way to me. I'm hoping somebody will come with the obvious lightning strike gotcha so that it can be health, wealth, time, and whatever, or, just 3 things, completely open to that. But yeah, those are the rocks. Are you keeping yourself healthy for the longest period of time? Do you have health span? Do you have, and wealth isn't Ja Rule, right? It's not like, it's not 50 Cent. It's like, do you have enough money to do what you want to do, to accomplish what you need to accomplish without worrying about it? And time freedom equally isn't, do you have all day in front of you with nothing to do and your feet up in a hammock? Because that's actually just as anxiety inducing and terrible as having no time. It's, do you have enough free time to reduce stress to a minimum while accomplishing what you want to accomplish in the world and still having a purpose? And so, yeah, they do. I mean, Ben, strike from the heavens with some lightning. Like, what are we missing here?
If I was to, put against my framework, it would be, health, wealth, love, and genius. So, I think that love is as big. And if you were to put a 5th in there, it would be impact. And maybe those things can just reside inside of another, they could reside inside of time or something else. But genius is like continuing to learn, continuing to grow, continuing to gain, turn yourself into a better version of yourself, not for the sake of knowledge itself, but for the impact you can then have on other people. And then I just think that, in terms of the connection thing as well, and this could be going to maybe all three of those across go into, because if you don't have any one of those, you don't have a full enough cup to be able to contribute in a meaningful way to a relationship. But I think the framework I'm always when in doubt, simplify. So I think the framework that you have for health, wealth, and time, it works. I've seen what you guys have created. I'm a framework nut. So anytime we can break things down into its constituent parts and go, hey, here's the things that this thing resides upon, and here's how it stems up to this bigger thing, I'm always sign me up. I think you guys have done a really good job of that. So again, it's like, what are the pillars? The real question, as Patrick started this thing, is like, it's the game is rigged if it's like the rocks are only the size of a golf ball. Like, okay, we can fit 6 of those rocks in the jar. Like, but what happens? This is what we're talking about. When one of those rocks is the size of a basketball, it doesn't even fit in the jar at all. So it's the thing what we've talked about a long time because we haven't talked about in a while, but the way we run our business is based off of EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Organizational Systems by Gino Wickman. And he says in it, like, you cannot do more than 5 rocks. 3 are better. Less is even better than that. When we create accountability within our organization, we maximum give 3 things that someone's responsible for and only 1 KPI, meaning everyone in the organization has a number, but only 1 number, because anything beyond that is levels of complexity. It's the same thing with this priority thing. Well, if you're saying priority, it's the one, like it's that only thing. So we almost need a different word than like priority. And I think that's why we don't use that word. What are your priority? It's like, how are you going to, what is the framework and what is the foundation and what is the balance of which we're going to create this meaningful life? If it's health, wealth, and time, or it's live, love, lead, and learn, if it's eat, sleep, train, move, think, connect, we're all stemming towards the same thing of let's create the meaningful things in our life that's going to get us to where we want to be. And let's take awareness, intention, and action on those things. What are those things? Like, we got to spend some time, and you don't have to have all the answers, and those things can change, shake, and move throughout time. That's what's supposed to happen through time. Nothing's supposed to stay static. Like, if it's different today than it was a decade ago, not okay, better. Yep. Like, better. And if it's different in a decade than it is now, better. Like, not right or wrong, just kind of continually to what fits your life right now. And then that's the awareness piece, intention. For you guys, these are the things I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to create wealth in my life now. Here's the 3, 4, 5, 6 things I'm going to do. This is the intention. And then, as we all know, you can wish, want, you can do all that stuff you want, but action speaks so much louder than words. I can't hear what you're saying because your action speaks so loudly. We need to take real action, because that's the only thing that actually creates a life of anything.
We can wrap it up here, but I was really interesting, and I just want to point out, you had mentioned impact as one of those maybe things that you would add. And what's really interesting about that is when Jon and I started this project, we actually started with impact. We started with the end result, or the target being impact. And where we got to health, wealth, and time was we started to unpack, what are the means by which you can do that on a sustainable basis? And what we got to was this idea of agency. And agency, how do you build agency? How do you create agency? Well, you need these 3 things. And so we ended up kind of reverse engineering, to the best that we could, this pursuit of long-term sustainable impact. In order to get that, you've got to build a life that you have enough agency, enough autonomy, enough freedom to go do the things that you feel like will create the most impact. And in order to get that kind of autonomy, you got to be healthy, you've got to be relatively wealthy, and you've got to own enough of your time to be able to go do that. So it's just really interesting, because it's right in line with what you said. It's just the project is very much focused on those kind of the beginnings of that, because that's where the meat and potatoes are, right? That's where the actions are, to your point. But all of it is to build towards a life of impact.
Yeah, it's great.
I love the note there, Ben, of genius.
Mm.
Building your own skills, bringing yourself forward, self-development. You can almost think about that as a form of wealth. I don't know that we ever explicitly have, but obviously the more you know, the more you're capable of doing, the larger the set of possibilities about what you could do in the world is. And if that's not wealth, frankly, I don't know what is. So
Yeah.
I love that. Can't wait to onboard it. And, love is obviously the thing that keeps us all going every day, whether we love our jobs, our families, our friends, or, we have love for ideas and frameworks. And so, making sure that doesn't get lost in the noise is such a great thing too, and maybe we go back to Courtney and say, maybe if you're having trouble with your priorities, make sure that they're centered on that idea. Are you making yourself better? Are you putting the love out into the world that you need to? And start there.
Brilliant. All right. Thanks, guys. That was fun. And thank you, Courtney. If you are out there and you want to get a question into the queue, either for our 5 factors or our future workout, find me on Instagram, PS Cummings. Drop me a DM. There's also a button there that you can send me an email if you are not on Instagram. I know some folks have reached out and said, how do I get a question if I'm not on Instagram? Good on you for not being on Instagram.
Yes.
But go to Instagram and press the button that says email me and you can get right at me. We'll be back to the show in just a minute.
Most traditional sports nutrition products are loaded with sugar, and athletes tend to take way too much of them. The spike and crash in blood sugar that over-consuming these products can have wreaks negative effects on your performance, your recovery, and your overall health. UCAN is different. It uses steady release carbs that maintain stable blood sugar levels and allow you to sustain peak performance. Whether you're on a long run or taking on a short, fast, and intense Metcon, this is the product for you. I've used this in the past for years and years, whether for training sessions or just as a snack. It's awesome for breakfast. The coolest thing about it is it has the carbs, which we all know give you energy, the primary fuel source that your body wants to use, but it has no spike in insulin levels. It's a really, really cool product, and it tastes really, really good. I like the lemon flavored energy powder, and that's weird because I don't even like lemons, but it's delicious. If you're looking for more energy with less sugar, give UCAN a try. Head to ucan.co/excellence and save 20% off your first order with the code EXCELLENCE. Again, that's ucan.co/excellence.
Okay, we're going to get into a cool down where we talk about the current challenge. We're wrapping up as we speak. Before we do, I just want to read a quick shout out. Shout out is when I highlight or re-highlight a note that Ben and I received, a review on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube, just as a way of saying thank you to folks out there for sending us notes. This is from Chris. I really love this. Reaching out to simply let you and Ben know that I've officially utilized the 5 factors of health as our vision moving forward at our UPS hub in Ocala, Florida. I currently carry the role of health, wealth, safety coach at our facility, as well as a full-time package driver. Over the course of the next 5 weeks, I'll be highlighting those 5 factors in hopes that others will realize that these are controllable and in fact critical to overall wellness. Highly enjoy the podcast and circling myself around the positivity that ripples off of the vibe. If that's not a sentence that comes straight from Florida, I don't know is positivity that ripples off the vibe. I certainly could never get away saying that. Keep up the good work and good things to follow. Thanks again. So thank you, Chris.
Love it. So cool. It's so cool when, I've had this conversation a couple of times actually recently, but when our listeners become the new, an additional hub off of the spoke, yep. Right? And now they are the leaders espousing through their own channels the 5 factors of health. That's so amazing and so I feel impactful. Like I hope all the best to everybody there at the UPS. It's really cool.
Love it. All right, our cool down. We did a cool down. I challenged all of us, mostly you and I, Ben, to cook 4 new meals over the course of the last 4 weeks. How do we do, John? I gave you enough heads up. You're on board, so you're on the hook for this as well. You knew this was coming, so we'll go, John. We'll go with you. We'll go you first. You're our guest.
Well, I had a different priority. No, I'm kidding. We went.
This was not one of my priorities, so I didn't do any of it. Good on you.
Yeah, in my house we went 2 for 4. So we tried 2 new things in the last couple weeks it was a lot of fun. I loved the challenge. Thanks for it. And it got me some steamed Japanese pork buns, which were just amazing. Completely not gluten free. So if that if that's important, we failed there. But it was cool to make that dough. To of course use the fish sauce and the pork and put that together, and they were just frankly just super delicious. So that was the win. And then had what I would call frankly a fail. And it was it was healthy sweet potato shepherd's pie. And it's like, how do you?
In theory, that sounds good.
Yeah, how do you fail at that? Is a great question. So my mom used to make shepherd's pie when I was a kid, and it did not have healthy in the title. So it was the beef that was like 80%, 20%. That stuff that's delicious and you don't probably eat a whole heck of a lot of, but this recipe substituted in ground turkey, and not the same, but it was worth a shot.
I'll go next, Ben, and then you can wrap it up. I almost completely failed this for many reasons, most of which being that cooking is not something that I've ever done very frequently. John, you remember what my meals used to look like back in 2007. It really hasn't changed too much, except I eat real food now. But I will say I did stumble upon one thing that worked really well for me. And that was once I got really clear on what the heck I was trying to accomplish. The idea of just like cooking new meals was almost too overwhelming for me. It was like I could cook anything for any meal for anybody. But once I started figuring out like, okay, well, what would actually be useful to me? What I came to was like, it would be really helpful for me and useful and valuable to me if I could come up with 2 or 3 meals that my boys would eat in the morning, because I'm tired of tired of trying to convince my 6-year-old to eat scrambled eggs. He just doesn't like scrambled eggs, but I'm trying. And so what I came to is like, okay, I want to find breakfast foods. Okay, I want to find breakfast meals that are simple to make and quick to make, because I'm usually doing it before school. I want to do, breakfast meals that are simple and quick that kids like. And my point being, like, once I really, really narrowed in on like very specifically what I was looking for, it sounds silly, but I could literally Google that thing and I got a whole bunch of options. And when I got really, really narrow and really specific, the overwhelm went away because I just constrained myself so much. So I ended up making breakfast quesadillas. I made some like egg muffin things and like what did they call it? Just basically like a scramble with cheese and breakfast sausage, and like nothing fancy at all, but one step beyond like, please eat the scrambled eggs this morning. And they were mildly successful. Like he was 50-50 on whether or not he liked it. But it was, to me, that was the value of it, is getting really specific and recognizing like, oh, if you just like create enough filters, the answers almost kind of come to you. And then it's just about kind of doing it. And that was really fun and really kind of empowering, because up until then, the idea of making food, making meals, honestly, it's just really intimidating. I don't like messing things up. And so when I'm always presented, like, especially with food, like, I don't want to waste this food. I don't want to waste everybody's time. And so that was always enough to like stop me. And then once I removed some of those barriers, because it's easy to just make some more eggs, I could actually take action, which was the point, which was ultimately useful.
If the challenge was cook 4 meals, I passed. If the challenge was try 4 new meals, I passed. If the challenge was cook yourself 4 new meals, I failed. So I don't know where I fall in that, but
were you catering? Like, how did that happen?
Heather made new stuff.
Gotcha.
Cool.
So I cooked plenty of meals for the kids, but I mean, it's such a cop out because it's basically reheating stuff in the air fryer because we have Paleo Power Meals.
Yep.
Plug to them because I think it's the best meal service ever created. It's amazing. Okay. But having said that, Heather made bean noodles. Are you like bean noodles? Do you know what these are?
I've had chickpea noodles. I don't know that I've had.
So maybe that's the same thing. I don't know. I think these are black beans because they were really dark noodles. The ingredients is literally beans, but they are noodles. It's kind of freaked me out, but they were cool. They were good. And then with it, she made some new she's been really good into making sauces. So she's also making these new incredible. I'm like, Heather, you got to sell these things. But salad dressing is always this like weird thing, right? It's like if you want it to taste good, you got to get the crappy stuff. If you want it to taste good and be healthy, you got to buy the crazy expensive stuff. But she found these recipes online, which the ingredients are just great. It's like extra virgin olive oil, 2 raw eggs, these different herbs and spices, and she just like blends it with this like little hand blender, and it comes out to taste like the best salad dressing I have ever had. You put it on anything. You put it on steak. You could put it on. So this is another thing we started is hand cut French fries. The easiest, like with kids, Patrick, like, you know how like, especially with EC, like potatoes are not bad. Hand cut French fries, whether in the oven or the air fryer, it's just a little bit of sea salt on them. The kids go crazy for them. It's awesome. Another thing I've come across, which I don't know how I've gotten to 46 years old and not known about this, but maybe this isn't what we're talking about, but cutting meat instead of like, because our kids, like you need to like cut them like the tiniest little pieces, right? If it's a piece of steak there, it's like, I don't want to eat it. Like, but if it's like these nice thin slivers, they're like, this is delicious. It's like, it's the same freaking thing. But it's so exhausting to like, and cumbersome and weird to like cut, take the fork out, cut. I'm like, I sound like a curmudgeon old man, but kitchen scissors. Are you familiar? Kitchen scissors.
I know that they exist. Yeah.
That's what I knew they exist. Have you ever used scissors to cut a piece of meat?
No.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's going to change your life. Both you guys tonight. I'm telling you, use kitchen scissors. It's so fast. It's so amazing. I always thought it was like this really strange thing. Like you're using some arts and crafts stuff to like prepare dinner. I'm telling everyone on Chasing Excellence needs to know, if you're going to cut your meat before it goes on your plate, use kitchen scissors. It's ridiculous.
And this is
okay. And then here's the other thing.
Post-cooking.
Post-cooking. Exactly right. Yep. But we'll even do is like cook a piece of steak, cut it into slivers and throw it back into a skillet. And then each piece gets kind of like crispy a little bit, and the kids love that as well. But then, Patrick, guess what came back after Heather listened to our Chris Kresser episode?
Oh no, tell me.
The liver smoothies. They're back.
Oh, they came back like they've re-entered your life.
Yes, she tricked me into one last night.
Were you informed prior, or did it just happen? You drank it, and she was like, "You know, it was."
She was so excited for me to try this smoothie, and I was like, "This is so weird." She kept on going like, "So how is it? How is it? How is it?" And I was like, I didn't have my radar up at all, and I was like, "It's good." She's like, "Yeah, it's good, right?" I was like, "Okay, whatever." Yeah, I didn't even think of anything. I didn't even answer. And she's like, "Did you try the smoothie?" And I was like, "Yes, yes." She's like, "It has liver in it."
Oh my God.
It's like, so
she's hilarious.
Yeah, that's back.
Amazing. All right. Well, I hope everybody out there had as much luck, or at least as much fun as it seems that we did. Thank you everybody out there for participating in it. That's a wrap, boys. Thank you both. I appreciate you both so much. I had so much fun. If anybody wants to check out the project Jon and I are working on, it's called Optimal Agency. We'll link it in the show notes, but you can find it at optimalagency.co. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. Thank you for your ratings and your reviews. Ben and I will be back next week for another episode of Chasing Excellence.